So personally, when I first came to Brilliant, I was thinking, oh man, this is gonna be such a journey. I was like so scared. I still remember walking into the hostel the first time. At first I genuinely thought, I was gonna drop out. I changed to online batch because I was like really depressed and I was really scared, thinking like, I don't know anything. Consistency is key, and I cannot stress it enough. Every day you should be doing what you need to do. Personally, I never followed any strict study pattern. I was more of a go with the flow kind of guy. I would wake up in the morning and I'd think, okay, what should I finish today? What are my targets for today? And I'll be honest, half the time I would not finish those targets. I'll be very honest. I should be studying 18, 20 hours a day. Let me sleep 4 hours. That's completely wrong. You need to have, a certain amount of time where you sort of just relax. For me, my relaxation came from talking to my roommates. I talk to my roommates every now and then, just occasionally in passing. And that really helps de-stress your mind. A lot of people have a common misconception that JEE Mains is just a qualification exam for advanced. It's not. It's also a very important exam. And I'll tell you why. Just follow the Brilliant material and follow what your teachers say that you should do, and that should be sufficient. My name's Joseph. I think he introduced me, but I also studied just like you guys, and I was in the same position as you guys last year. I also was holding my hands in my head, and I was thinking to myself, oh man, this is never gonna end. I'm gonna have to be like this for 1 year. I used to study, I'm from the US, and so I came from the US in 8th grade, and I joined a school called Palikuram, which is close to here. And I studied there from 8th to 12th, and I didn't take any coaching or anything in 11th or 12th, because I honestly didn't really know much about entrance exams like that. But I was also just like you guys, I never did anything special. But let me tell you, it gets better. So I'm gonna start off by asking a question. It's quite an easy question. Just raise your hand if you do know the, whatever. How many of you guys know that V is equal to U plus AT? Just raise your hand. Oh wow, that's everybody. That's very good. How many people know that V squared is equal to U squared plus 2AS? Again, everybody. How many people know that S is equal to UT plus half AT squared? Everybody. Now let me tell you, you guys should give yourself a big pat on the back. You know much more than I did last year. Before coming here, I was pretty dumb. I honestly didn't know anything. And I came here thinking, oh man, I really have to. I thought to myself, wow, I'm so far behind everybody. I really have to catch up. And let me tell you, it was quite the experience. And there's always ups and downs to everything, but it's better to look on the bright side. So I don't want to bore you guys too much, so I'll speak quite fast and try and keep it nice and concise. I'll split it into 3 parts. The first part I'll talk about, sort of my experience. Then I'll get into classes, how they work. Obviously you should pay attention. And lastly, I'll just talk about exams. So personally, when I first came to Brilliant, I was thinking, oh man, this is gonna be such a journey. I was so scared. I still remember walking into the hostel the first time, and I went up to my room. I was in the hostel called Liberty, and I walked into my room, and everybody was there except me. And I remember walking in, and everybody was sitting there studying, and I was like, oh damn, this is brilliant. And so, obviously I talked to everybody, and slowly, we all became friends. At first I genuinely thought, I was gonna drop out. I changed to online batch because I was really depressed, and I was really scared, thinking I don't know anything. I'm so far, everybody here is 90 percentile, 85 percentile, 95 percentile, and I was thinking, oh man, I'm so far behind everybody else. But let me tell you, I feel like there'll be people here that have that same worry, oh man, I'm so far behind. Let me tell you, it does not matter. The effort you put in from here on out is what defines you. You might know nothing right now, but in 1 year, you'll be, the smartest you've ever been. But for that to happen, you have to stay consistent and work hard. I had many roommates who scored, more than me. Were scoring more than me in the mock exams. And, I would always ask them for tips. Oh man, how did you study? How do you study like this? How can you study so long? And they all, said, oh, I'll do these hard books. I'll do very, very advanced topics from the start. And, they sort of lost motivation, 3 months in, and they stopped studying. And eventually they did not get the results they want. So the most important thing when it comes to repeating is staying consistent. Consistency is key, and I cannot stress it enough. Every day you should be doing what you need to do. Personally, I never followed any strict study pattern. I was more of a, go with the flow kind of guy. I would wake up in the morning and I'd think, okay, what should I finish today? What are my targets for today? And I'll be honest, half the time I would not finish those targets. I'll be very honest. I'd only finish, half of those things. And I think to myself, oh man, today was a waste. But let me tell you, that day was not a waste. Even though I didn't finish my topics, I studied everything that I could to the best level that I could. So you shouldn't worry, just stay very consistent. That is the most important thing. Now, another piece of advice I personally have, which, I think would work for most people here, personally it worked for me, is keep short notes book, like 2 books. Personally, I didn't make it for chemistry, but for physics and math, I think it's very important. You should make a book where you keep all the formulas. Because, towards the end of the year, it gets very, very hectic. You have so many topics. It's hard to look back at everything because you'll have big, big notebooks. And it's hard to look back at every single formula and be know everything to a certain level. So keeping a short notes book where you have all the concepts in this small book that you can just look at a glance. It's very important, especially, right before JEE Mains and JEE Advanced. It helps a lot to study. So I'd say start doing that now. Personally, I only started it around November, but best thing, my advice for you guys, start right now. Start making a short notebook. That should be one of your top priorities. Then, obviously the hostel. The hostel's great, let me be honest with you guys. I also came in with the thought that, oh man, I'm so scared. I don't know if these hostels are gonna be great. But let me tell you, the hostel is amazing. You have every facility you need to study. And, one common misconception that people have is, okay, all the time I need to study. I should be studying 18, 20 hours a day. Let me sleep 4 hours. That's completely wrong. You need to have, a certain amount of time where you sort of just relax. For me, my relaxation came from talking to my roommates. I talk to my roommates every now and then, just occasionally in passing. And that really helps de-stress your mind. So don't go into it with the thought that, okay, I need to study all the time. I should only focus on this and I cannot talk to anybody, I'm gonna be silent. No, you should talk to your roommates, get to know your roommates, and they'll end up being your best friends. Other than that, obviously I should talk about classes. I think you guys have 3 classes a day, 3 hours each class, should be physics, chemistry, math. And the most important thing is you need to pay attention to your classes. I think, commonly people think that you shouldn't be a front bencher. Oh, being in the front bench is such a nerdy thing to do. Let me tell you, sitting in the front bench was the best decision I ever made because it let me really focus on the classes. Because the classes are where you build your concepts. It's the base level. That is what you need to really focus on, is paying attention during class. So make sure you always pay attention in class, and more importantly, respect your teachers. It may seem, a little bit, common, oh, you have to respect your teachers. But let me be honest, I saw a lot of disrespect towards the teachers. And when you sort of treat a teacher poorly, they tend to reciprocate that. So always treat your teachers with respect, because these are the people that will get you these ranks. They are the people who will, really, really improve your sort of knowledge. So respect your teachers. Also respect your wardens and your mentors. Brilliant has very, very great wardens. Let me be very honest with you. Personally, I had, in my hostel, we had Dipu sir, Arun sir, Ebi sir, Anandan sir, Ephraim sir, and many more that I'm forgetting, but they are all amazing. And if you have any worries, the first person you should talk to, other than your parents obviously, the first person you must go to is your warden. Then we also have very great coordinators, Binal sir and Benoy sir, wherever he is. They are also very, very amazing and will always be open to talking to you. So if you have any issues, just go to them. Like whenever I had any issue, I'd go straight to them and they would sort it out instantly. So there's really no worries about that. Then for the exam point of view, like how you should study, personally, how I studied wasn't really conventional. I really didn't know anything before coming here, so I was a big theory guy. Like, I'd focus more on theory than questions. So first, what I would do is, you have to make good notes. That's very important. So first, I would take my notes, and I would study everything to a sort of basic level, where I can sort of, understand the concepts behind questions, and, begin to be able to do them. So first thing you should do is study your notes. Then, personally, what I did is I do PYQs. A lot of people have a common misconception that JEE Mains is just a qualification exam for advanced. It's not. It's also a very, very important exam. And I'll tell you why. It's because if you do end up qualifying for mains and you get, a sort of good rank, good enough to get you into like a decent NIT, then you can study for advanced with full confidence. I think that was one of the best things that happened to me. My first session, JEE Mains, went very well, and I got a pretty good percentile. And from then on, I was really able to focus on advanced, because advanced requires a lot more in-depth knowledge. It's not just by hearting, it's more concept-based. So for that, you do need time. You need time to build those concepts. So you should be giving priority, just as much as priority, to studying for advanced as you are for mains. So mains is very important, do not neglect it. How I studied personally is I take my PYQs and I just do them. I didn't really follow any other book. I'm sure other than the study material from Brilliant, Brilliant's materials are enough. I think lots of people have the worry that, okay, I have to do this big book, Iridov, Pathfinder, DC, like anything. Where it's like, you don't really need to, just follow the Brilliant material and follow what your teachers say that you should do, and that should be sufficient. So, like that, until November, that's how you should study. From November onwards, I suggest you focus only on mains. Study for mains very properly and try and get as great a percentile as you can, because once you get that percentile, it's sort of a weight off your shoulders. So, like that until November. Then after November, you should obviously focus on to advanced. For advanced is a concept-driven exam rather than, a formula-driven exam. So once again, what I personally did is I studied a lot of theory. I don't know if that'll work for everybody. Some people are more question-based, but I think it's important that you should understand the concepts behind things before doing a question. So for that, personally, I did theory. But if you like doing questions, you can also do that. I know lots of people who did. And another thing is, don't get overconfident. I know a lot of people last year who had, some very great percentile, like 99. They all thought, okay, I have 99 already. Let me study a little bit less than everybody else. I have this base. But in the end, they went down. They got less percentile in mains than they had the previous year. So for that is never be overconfident. Overconfidence will kill you. You should focus on doing everything the same level that you were doing before. If you already have 99, before coming to, you should study like you want 99 again. You have to always remain like a sort of consistent base effort where, you'll get something. So like that, I think that comes to the exam point of view. Then when you're writing exams, how I personally did, I did chemistry, physics, math, but for that, everybody's different. Exam temperament is very important. I think JEE Mains is more of a time-based exam rather than like a concept-based exam where you should put time into every subject as as you see fit. Personally, I did like 40 minutes for chemistry, 1 hour for physics, and then like an hour, 20 minutes for math. But for everybody, that'll be different. But make sure that you manage your time very properly. I think that should really be it. I wish all of you guys the best. I'm sure you'll get very great results. Just make sure to stay consistent and be very confident, and you'll do great.
Brilliant Study Center, India's #1 coaching center for NEET and JEE.